Good morning, everyone. Sorry about the late start of the planning committee today. We had a fire emergency, which turned out not to be an emergency, so thank goodness for that. So if we're all ready and happy to start now, yes, good, okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Winchester City Council's Planning Committee, taking place in the Walton Suite at Winchester Guildhall. It is Wednesday. What is it? Got the wrong date on here. Wednesday, the 13th of November, and the time is nearly 9:45. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I'm chair of the Planning Committee. Around the table, we have the other elected members of the committee, and we are supported today by a number of officers: Lorna Hutchings from the planning team, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, the case officers who will change with each item, and Claire Buchanan from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Please can I remind everyone to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off altogether. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, as it was earlier this morning, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. I hope you've looked at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. So we now turn to today's agenda. So Claire, do we have any apologies or deputy members?
Thank you, Chair. No apologies for absence received. All members are present. Thank you.
Splendid. Members, any disclosures of interest? Councillor Small?
Yes, item number 9 is in my ward, but I haven't spoken to anybody about it. But item number 10, I'll take myself out of the room because I do have an opinion about it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ashwell.
Yeah, items 9 and 10, both in my ward. I haven't spoken about it, so
you've not
stay in the meeting.
Splendid. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's item number 6 is in my county council division, but I have had no conversations with any of the applicants regarding the application.
Any others? No. Thank you very much. The minutes of the previous meeting held on the 16th of October are on pages 9 to 14 of our agenda packs. Are those a correct record? Is that agreed? Thank you, members. We now turn to the update sheet. Can I ask that it is agreed that we accept the update sheet onto the agenda? Is that agreed, members? Thank you. Right, we now turn to our planning applications. So item number 6 on your agenda. And this is an application at 6 Skintle Green, Colden Common. And our presenting officer is Cameron Finch. So if you could give us your presentation, please, Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this application is at 6 Skintle Green in Colden Common for the erection of a detached dwelling. So we have the location plan here, the site outline in red, the blue line denotes ownership of the site, and we see the pattern of development along Skinsell Green, from the road along Brickmakers and then going east to where the site is. We now have an aerial view of the same of the location plan, and the position of the dwelling outlined by the star there. Number 6 is here where the red arrow is currently pointing. The access is to the rear, and then the red line just along here denotes the public right of way which runs adjacent to the site. We now have the site plan, so this is the proposed site plan. The existing number 6 Skinsell Green is this dwelling. The proposed dwelling is here. The dwelling has a width of approximately 9.5 metres at its widest point. We then also see the amenity space for the 2 dwellings, and then to the rear alterations to create the parking area for both number 6 and then the new dwelling. So now we have the proposed front elevation. Just to note the proposed materials of render and larch cladding. We then have the west facing elevation which faces number 6. This is the rear elevation, the north which faces the car parking area, and then dwellings at a further distance. And then this is the eastern elevation. So this is the elevation which faces the trees along the boundary and then the public right of way. This is a proposed street scene showing both number 6 and then the proposed dwelling from head-on street view. The datum point for the existing dwelling is 46 exactly to the existing ridge, and then the datum point for the new dwelling is 47.65. We then have the ground floor plan. This is the first floor, so 3 bedrooms at this level. And then the single bedroom at the second floor level. We then have the roof plans showing the main gabled roof there, and then the 2 offshoots that are at a single story level either side. We now have the tree protection plan on your left. On your right, you see the GIS, which denotes where the protected trees are in relation to the site. For clarity, the pink lines that you see on there are the root protection areas of the trees. And then the ones marked in red are the ones proposed for removal. And I will just move it along to a closer view of that, so the ones that wrap close to the dwellings. So again, the pink lines here, those are the root protection areas of the trees, and the red show the trees for removal. So we now move on to photographs. This is the view of the site as you approach from walking along Skinsell Green from the west. This is a head-on view from the footpath straight in front of the site. And this is the access to the public right of way. We then have a couple of views from within the rear garden of number 6. We then have views of the dwelling from the public right of way, and the stars on there just to denote whereabouts the dwelling would appear. So this is looking in either direction from north and south. This is the image of the access to the dwelling from along Settlers Close. And then finally, this is a view of the existing parking area with the existing garage, which would be brought into the curtilage of the new dwelling. Recommendation is to permit the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cameron. We now move to public speaking, and our first public speaker is Peter Catchpole, and I think you've got a presentation as well, Cam, which you will put up. Thank you. You'd like to come forward anywhere? That's perfect. When you're ready, you'll have 3 minutes. Just press the button on the base of the unit and that'll switch the microphone on, but we won't start the timer until you start speaking. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to present. I'm a neighbour, I'm in 8 Skintle Green, and so I'm adjacent to them across the footpath. What I'd like to say is that there have been a lot of objections to this. I've put them onto a plan to show some of the ones locally, so you can see that there is quite a lot of local feeling against this objection. I've also captured in the table here showing the different addresses that are objected and different topics that they've objected to show it's not just a single issue here that people are objecting to, they're objecting to a wide range of different issues to do with the development. And so there's quite a widespread unhappiness. I've spoken to a number of the members there, the people there, not all of them. So I do represent, you know, more than just myself here as I'm talking. Can I have the next slide, please? Is it possible to take this out of the view of it? The timer? All right. So this is just to show you the plan. If you can have the next slide, please. That's where the proposed dwelling is. You've shown this already. The footpath along Skintle Green is not going to provide any access. It's a pedestrian footpath. Next slide, please. So that's the access that is going to have to be taken to get to that plot. It's all busy areas. They're certainly along the back of the property. It's a very narrow area. There's elderly people there. There's infirm people there that use it to provide access for their cars. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is Brickmakers. That's the turn that's going to be made into the road there. There's lots of cars parked. It's quite busy. There's children, as I said, there's infirm adults. Next slide, please. This is now where you've got to dodge around 5 Skintle Green's back garden. When they produced that big extension on the side of 6 Skintle Green, the neighbour permitted them to take that fencing down to provide access to the plot. And the neighbour and the manager, the site manager then said they wouldn't have been able to do the extension without that change being made. That neighbour said they will not do that in this case. And therefore there is very restricted access to the back of that plot to be able to get work, you know, the heavy machinery. And in addition, there's not really any parking for the people who want to be there. Next slide, please. All right, next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right, so this is about root protection areas and the fact the standard says about the minimum root protection area. Next slide, please. So this is the plot you've seen. Next slide, please. I thought I'd just fill in to show this is actually the root protection areas and the buildings being built on top of the root protection, the minimum root protection areas that have been defined. Next slide, please. This is just to show the impact of the footpaths there that do impact on the root protection areas, and the standard says that should be accounted for when considering the root protection areas. Next slide, please.
I'm afraid that's the end of your time.
Okay.
But I'm sure members will have questions of clarification.
Thank you.
I should have said right at the beginning, of course, that most of the members of the planning committee did have a formal site visit to the site yesterday morning. So we have seen all those things that you've just been describing so eloquently as well for ourselves. A couple of members weren't able to come, but most of us have been there in person. So we have had a good look. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for Mr. Catchpole, please? Yeah, I think you've very well made your point. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry you ran out of time, but thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Next we have Councillor Alex Loughran. Good morning. I'll call you Alex, shall I? Thank you. Okay, Alex, you have 3 minutes when you're ready, and you know how to switch on the microphone, I think. Yes, thank you very much.
Alex Loughran, Parish Councillor and representing Colton Common Parish Council. The Parish Council objects to this application. Our objections are not NIMBYism. The village has grown massively and successfully over the years. Colton Common has 4 significant features: oak trees, woodlands, a network of ancient footpaths and green spaces. The proposed infill dwelling damages all 4. Skintle Green is part of the 1970s award-winning estate, designed with open green space, separate garages to the rear of the properties and relatively low density. Supplementary planning guidance to policies DM15 and DM16 in the adopted village design states new development should not disrupt the rhythm and the character of the area, and new development should reflect building material and style used nearby. Reduction of green space at the end of Skintle Green will result in the dwelling being 5 metres from mature oaks, 7 protected trees, and under a canopy, which at some point will be an issue with the trees overhanging the building, touching the roof, causing shading and light issues and potential subsidence claims as the soil is clay. Pages 36 and 41 of the officer's report illustrates this. These oaks line the ancient right-of-way and offer a high amenity value. Recent Winchester City Council officers' reports on determined applications state that as the Regulation 19 local plan has full council approval, it should be given an appropriate and increasing weight in assessment of this application. This does not appear to be the case in this application. Policy NE15 in the emerging plan provides a requirement of a 15-metre buffer between development and significant and protected trees. This development will result in a gap of less than 5 metres, as measured on Parish Online. The existing house with extension provides a 15-metre gap. This development will exacerbate the already present narrow access and parking issues. Only 2 off-road parking spaces are proposed. Many objections have been made from other long-term residents who bought their houses subject to restrictive covenants and willingly met them. In summary, the development has an adverse impact on the character of this area as defined in the supplementary planning guide in the village design statement. The proposal is overdevelopment. The development does not adequately consider and is therefore counter to policy NE15 in the emerging local plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the Parish Council rep? Councillor Laming.
No, thank you, Chair. You say that the land is basically clay, and you had subsidence issues.
Many houses have had to be underpinned.
Right, is that because of the close proximity of oak trees?
It's for all sorts of reasons, but oak trees are an additional factor if that is not the case.
Okay.
Anything else? No? I think you made your case very clearly. Thank you very much indeed. If you could switch the microphone off. Thank you. Return to your seat. Thank you. And next we have Councillor Sue Cook, who is a local city councillor for the area. Good morning, Councillor Cook. You know the routine, so when you're ready, you have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, fellow councillors, officers and members of the general public. I wish to thank you for allowing me to speak here today at this planning meeting. I understand that the planning officer has recommended this application for permission, and it is considered it will not have an adverse impact on the character of the area in accordance with the policies DM15 and DM16, and would not harm neighbouring residential amenity in accordance with policy DM17, local plan, part 2. Of course it wouldn't, as it's the neighbour that is the applicant of number 6. In the recommendation, it also goes on to say it wouldn't be harmful to the adjacent protected trees in accordance with policy DM 24 of the local plan. But doesn't the emerging local plan, policy NE 15, say not to build within 15 metres of trees? What we have here is a 3-storey, 4-bedroom property. Despite the applicant changing the layout of the parking at the rear of number 6, it doesn't actually provide even enough minimum parking standards of a 4-bedroom house. There is no doubt great concern about the proximity of the new build being so close to the footpath, number 11, which is an ancient right-of-way, the felling of trees, and of course the overdevelopment of the current spacious street scene. The village design statement is clear and it identifies as a very characteristic of the plan. I do believe that it was in fact Chilworth Homes that designed the Brickmakers Estate, and it won numerous awards for its layout and the open spaces with the rights of way and tree-lined roads. Designs and fashions have evolved since the 1960s, but when this estate was designed and built, providing family homes in a spacious, thoughtful manner. It's a 2-storey area, and this application is 3 stories, and it is overdevelopment, and it doesn't look appropriate, and it is harmful to the general character of the green and the surrounding nearby homes. May I ask, if the committee were mindful to permit this application, can I please ask that the Winchester City Council Tree Officer report, as one of the consultees back in May 2022, the objection was in fact, the comment that was made was no objection. And I quote, if the case officer is minded to grant consent, I suggest the following tree protection conditions. This is what was said. The report is obviously on the planning portal for all to read. I want to say how grateful I was to be able to attend the site visit yesterday, and I am grateful to all that attended. When one looks at plans, as we all do as councillors and members of the general public, it's exciting, especially for the desire to build something that is initially what could say is a dream for an applicant. But this application is, and I'm going to use, if I may, Madam Chair, a non-planning term. Here it is attempting to put a pint into a half-pint glass. The design, yes, is imaginative, but it is completely out of character and deviates greatly from the original development. This is why I sit here before you today, and time has passed and a minor change has been made for a window. I would ask the committee seated here today to refuse this application in its current design, its height and size. And if permitted to say at this stage, Madam Chair, and please do stop me, I would ask the applicant to look at maybe their current home and see what changes they can make to that home and still have a desire to build something special, because I know from this applicant, and should I say the family, really do want to stay in Colden Common because it is an excellent village to live in. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the local councillor? No, I think you were very clear. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Cook. Thank you. Our final public speaker is Philip Robinson for the applicant, and I believe you have a presentation as well, which, Cam, are you putting that up? Thank you very much. When you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first issue I'd like to address is the impact on the trees. The very first step in this design process was to employ an extremely experienced arboricultural consultant. He carried out a detailed survey and set out the limitations of what we could achieve without having a detrimental impact on the trees. He also consulted with the tree officer at Winchester to ensure that our proposals would be acceptable. Both our expert and the local authority experts agree that the proposals are acceptable if the constructions are controlled by means of a planning condition. Next issue is the impact on the adjacent footpath. From the photographic assessment that you can see up on the screen there, that shows a number of views from the footpath very close to the application site. As you can clearly see, there are a number of houses built hard up to the path with no screening whatsoever. Our new dwelling will be actually sort of very well screened from the footpath, with only sort of glimpses of the building available from there, and it will have no impact on the path at all. Certainly no greater than what currently exists within 100 yards of the existing site. If I could have the next slide, please. I think the planning officer's report summarises very well exactly why the current proposals would be considered acceptable for the site in terms of design and massing. Whilst there was a very clear visual style for the estate when it was first built, over the years it's been diluted by extensions and alterations and changes in materials, as you can see from some of the photos up there that are all very close to the site. The only really clearly defining attribute that remains are the large open greens to the building frontages, and because of the siting of our building, they're not going to be impacted at all. The building is going to be largely screened by the existing house, and against the backdrop of the very large trees, the natural materials we're proposing and the design we're proposing, I think will sit in there quite well. It's not like it's positioned right in the middle of the estate. It's right on the edge and sort of a transition position between the buildings and the vegetation. With regards to the parking and construction traffic management, the parking provision complies with the local plan requirements and have been approved by the Highways Department. The site access is fairly tight, but certainly nothing particularly unusual, and that can all be controlled by means of a planning condition, which is, fairly standard for sites that are, have fairly tight accesses. I think that sort of addresses most of the issues, so happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Members, questions of clarification for the agent, please. Mr. Robinson. Nope. Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. You may return to your seat. Thank you. Right. Karen, did you want to make any comments before members' questions following public contributions, please?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Chair.
Members, we'll take questions on any part of the report. If you could just tell me which page you're referring to with your specific questions. Councillor White.
I'm referring to the update sheet where it says the 15-metre buffer zone isn't required because it's not ancient woodland and veteran trees. So I'm not clear on what the appropriate buffer would need to be for TPO trees. So these trees are protected. So what distance would be needed, as it says in the update, to provide appropriate protection of these trees? And also, if there's a root protection area, I'm wondering what the point of having that assessment done if then the house is going to be built on that area.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yes, in the update sheet, we've had a look at the emerging local policy plan NE15, which I think is what is being referenced with regards to the 15-metre buffer zone. So that is specific in that buffer zone applies to ancient woodlands and veteran trees, which is based on guidance set out by Natural England. We've gone through the tree schedule for this site through the survey that's been provided to us. We have mature and young trees, but we don't have any veteran trees on the site, and it is an ancient woodland. So in that case, that part of the policy does not apply to the section, this section of protected trees. So we then look at the protection that's been provided. The tree officer has had a look at that as we've heard today, and what we've got is there is limited encroachment in terms of the root protection area. In the cases of 3 trees, in these cases, though, it is less than 5% of the root protection areas for each tree, which was agreed with the tree officer during the stage prior to them submitting the planning application that that would be acceptable, and then the design and position of the dwelling has been based around that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you. I'm going to page 17 regarding the highways, Hampshire County Council highways, saying there's no objection. But Cameron, can you just remind us what are the standard car parking for 4-bedroomed house? Because now we're going to have 2 4-bedroomed houses. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Hampshire Highways offered no objection. However, it's important to note they do delegate the matters of parking back to us to assess in accordance with our car parking standards. So the residential car parking standards would require 3 car parking spaces for a 4-bedroomed house. So the way that we've assessed this is the garage as existing is accommodated within the curtilage of the new dwelling, which would provide 2 spaces. And then you've then got the expanded area where the garden is then reduced on number 6. And we've looked at the space. We think it is possible to park 6 cars within that area. Granted, there may need to be some moving around of cars in agreement with owners, but we do believe there is sufficient space, including the garage provision, to provide the appropriate car parking for this dwelling.
Thanks.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. I have several questions actually, but going back to the update sheet, we're talking about the protection of the roots. Now that area being on clay suffers an awful lot with movement of the soil. Now where those trees are along the edge of the footpath, are they within the curtilage of the property or are they the footpath?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the oak trees that have been protected are along the footpath. So
It's just that when we were there, you could see a bit of a wire fence that was one side of the trees and the wooden fence was the other side. And that's why I asked the question.
yes, thank you. So you can see here, these are the protected trees along the public right of way. So they're on this side of the wooden fence.
Right, so if subsidence is caused on the new build, it would mean then that they would be able to come back to Winchester City and say that we have to take those trees down because of they're interfering with the build. Do we have a duty of care on these? Because we're opening ourselves to liability.
We don't consider that to be a planning issue. It would come up more in the building control issue, and obviously where we do have applications to remove TPO trees, they do come before this committee quite largely, and then those matters of liability have been sort of discussed in those circumstances. So I know members are aware of the I suppose the ins and the outs of those matters, which aren't really consideration in this.
Yeah, it's just that there have been several cases around there, we're led to believe, of subsidence caused by trees in dry weather.
I think, Madam Chair, to assist, yeah, we've dealt with those applications, as you rightly say, Councillor, and there's issues about liability. If a tree's not fouled, then obviously the council may be liable for any compensation because the tree would still continue to have an impact upon the subsidence. The point is, however, those applications come forward from many decades ago. With modern building methods, one would hope that building control would anticipate that those trees do have the potential here, given the soil conditions, to cause subsidence. So it will be a building control matter rather than a planning issue as it was. So it would also be for the applicant and the builders. It would be essentially caveat emptor in the sense that when they build this, they have to bear in mind the conditions and make sure it's suitable for the current building practices. So I hear what you're saying, but I think ultimately the planning committee looks at planning policy, planning law. This is probably covered by building control and that parallel regime here.
So would building control have a say in this application?
I couldn't possibly say, Councillor, it'd be a matter for building control. What you're deciding here at the moment is within the red line and the curtilage of the issue. Those trees are outside the red line. It will be for the owner of those trees to make any necessary application, or indeed, if members were minded to approve this, the new dwelling owner can apply to have those trees felled if subsidence was an issue. Now, what we're talking about are hypotheticals, crystal ball matters. You're here to decide the application on its own merits, what not could possibly happen in the future in relation to those trees and the implications thereof.
Thank you. I'll go through that, but
Maybe in debate, perhaps councillor Laming, councillor Small.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yesterday when we were on the site visit, there was discussion about the ridge height of the new building. And I believe at the time we were under the impression it was 0.5 metre higher than the current building, but I see on the update sheet it's 1.65 metres. Can we just clarify that that is correct?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So following the site visit, we went back to have a look at the datum points to get a sort of more accurate representation. So apologies, that was something just to clarify from the site visit yesterday. So the height is the difference is 1.65 as on the update sheet. So yeah, here we are. So this is the scale drawing. It is the street scene. It is a scale drawing, so that sort of gives you an indicative sort of difference in how the heights will appear from along Skintle Green there.
Councillor Ashmore?
So I just want a bit more clarification on that then. So how much higher will it be than the current chimney that's there?
Thank you. So yeah, as I say, in terms of the measurement that we've got, it is from the ridge heights. So this is 46 datum here, and this is the 47.65 datum here. In consideration of this, we've also taken into account things like the eaves heights, so the lower eaves on this dwelling, which give a sort of idea of the proportion of scale. But those are the two datum points that we've received for this. Thank you.
Any more questions on the report? Otherwise, we will move to debate. So debate. Who would like to kick us off? Councillor Ashmore.
Have concerns regarding the allocated parking. I don't think it's sufficient, to be honest, because we've got 8 bedrooms now. Could be having up to 8 cars. It's too narrow. So yeah, I'm not content with the parking issue. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, thank you to the speakers who put quite eloquent contributions towards putting forward their views on this application. I understand some objections are well mitigated through conditions such as access in regards to the construction management plan. In regards to the height, 1.65 metres I was comfortable with the 0.5 metres as we were aware yesterday, but 1.65 does slightly steer towards sort of 3-storey rather than 2.5 for me. However, I still could probably support the application if it was just the height that was the issue. The thing that I'm really uncomfortable about in supporting this application is due to the proximity of the building to the trees, including the root protection zones. So I'm still undecided, but that is very much leaning me towards not supporting the application just because of its proximity towards and overlap in some of those tree protection zones.
Councillor White.
Yeah, I'm still not comfortable with the proximity to the trees and the root protection zone. There is going to be inevitably future pressure on those trees, although they've got tree protection orders. If in the future they become detrimental to the building, I can see that there will be pressure on them in that respect, but also the clay soil. So it's a combination of factors about the trees.
Councillor Clare.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I couldn't make the site visit yesterday, but I have looked on another occasion and I know the area well. What is concerning me is the difference of now of 1.65 metres, because I believe that will now over dominate the existing street scene. So on that alone, I'm afraid I can't support the application.
Councillor Laning?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Clear about the height. I think that the proposal is overdevelopment of the site. I'm worried about the parking arrangements at the back because I think that they are really tight and it gives accessibility a big problem. I am very concerned about the trees and the root damage because that area being built on clay will inevitably rise to some form of subsidence, and I generally think this is out of keeping the character of the area, so I'm afraid I can't support this one.
Paula? Councillor Langford Smith? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. On the visit yesterday, we did discuss the roof height and we were advised that it was 50 centimetres higher than the house. You could see that quite clearly from the public footpath. So the fact that it's actually 1.65 higher, I do believe that will impact on the ancient right of way. So I have concerns about that. My second concern is about the parking. It's not unfeasible to consider that there could be 16 cars for 8 bedrooms. There is absolutely no way that there is sufficient parking at these two properties. But for me, the overwhelming issue is the trees. All guidance is that oak trees should be at least 50 feet in old money, 15 metres from buildings. So this development is over 30 feet too close to those trees. Building control will require them to go down 2.4 metres. So on balance of probability, the tree roots will be damaged. Yep. I think this is a nice house, but it's in the wrong location. So I'm afraid I can't support this application.
Thank you. I'd like to make a few contributions here. I wrote down 4 things that really concern me particularly about this application. Whilst on paper and in the report, it does appear that it meets our policies. On paper, there are 4 parking spaces if you include the garage. How many people park in their garage? On paper, there's a construction management plan, so that very narrow access is feasible for the construction. On paper, the construction is going to be not too close to the neighbouring house and not too close to the ancient footpath and not too close to the trees. I'm sorry, having seen the site and seen those trees, I think we're talking semantics here. Those are mature. Okay, they're not veteran, but in 100 years' time, they certainly will be, except that in 100 years' time, if we allow this house, they won't still be there. These are incredibly vulnerable elements that are very difficult to put onto paper and are very difficult, but it's our job as local representatives to interpret the spirit of our local plan as much as its actual words, and to look at the character, the wider character of the area. Now, if you do look at a much wider area, certainly the building as proposed is not particularly out of character, but in this particular close, in this particular setting, it is completely out of character. It will be overbearing, not necessarily from the far end of the close where you can't actually see it, but as you walk through towards the ancient footpath and the ancient trees, it will be overbearing and it will stick out like a sore thumb. I'm concerned about the amenity space of the existing house. I think the gap between the houses is very narrow and uncharacteristic of the rest of the close, and I don't like that at all. I think it's just far too close, and it's obviously very close because they're trying to keep the house away from the tree roots. I think the difference between 15 metres and 5 metres on paper, I think as I say, I think that the impact will be to kill the trees, and I don't want that to happen. So my view, despite the fact that on paper this looks okay. Actually, when you're there, when you consider the impact of the proposed dwelling, not only on the existing dwellings and the garden and the existing neighbours, but the trees and the footpath and the wider community. And when you consider how vulnerable those natural elements and how important to the character of the area they are, I'm afraid I cannot support this application. Did anybody else want to contribute to debate? No? Okay, so we now move to the vote. Now, this application is recommended for approval. So can I see all those in favour of approving this application, please? And all those against?
That's 9 unanimous refusal.
All members against. Okay. So we now have to agree our reasons for refusal, and we will talk to our officers about that, and then we will vote again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I've been listening to what members were saying in the debate, and there's some key commonality there, just particularly about the height of the building and the siting of it, because it's a site that is quite well, it's very close proximity to the trees, isn't it? And you've got the right of way next to it. So I've focused a reason for refusal in listening on into those things. And you've got quite a distinctive character of the area as well, which is recognised in the Colne Common design statement. But I'm going to put them into a sort of a design reason, I think, rather than a separate tree reason, because you do have an ARB statement that is proving that it's difficult to sort of evidence the actual physical harm to those trees. But so it's more of a design issue in the close proximity. So in summary, I would recommend for your consideration that we say something along the lines that it's contrary to policies in Local Plan Part 1, CP13, which is high quality design, Local Plan Part 2, which is DM 15 and 16, which are our local distinctiveness and sort of character design policies, and the Colne Common design statement, which is 2001, I believe. For reasons of height and size and siting in relation to the trees and which have tree protection orders, and the public right of way, which results in a cramped and overbearing layout and appearance, which fails to ensure adequate space for parking and manoeuvring, with potential in future to pressure to fell trees, given the limited space available, and therefore it doesn't respect the characteristics that contribute to the distinctiveness of the area, and will therefore have a harmful impact to the visual amenities and the wider character of this part of Colne Common. Is there anything you wanted to ask about more specifically in those questions, or any contributions, Dan? Yeah, we would ask for the wording precisely to be delegated back to us, Chair, in agreement with yourself.
And approved by the Deputy Chair.
Yes.
Is DM 24 possible? So
It will bring an awful lot of focus, particularly on the trees and the nature and of the tree itself. And I think it's more about
the general character of the area.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, I think that sounds very good. Thank you. Members, any other suggestions as for reasons for refusal? No, you're happy with the summary from our officer? So we will take a vote again. So we now take a vote on, given those reasons for refusal as outlined by our officer. Can I see all those in favour of refusing this application, please?
That's 9 unanimous, Chair.
Okay, so that application is refused. Thank you very much. We'll just swap over the officers and then we'll look at item number 7. Right, are we ready? Yes, good. So the next item on our agenda, item number 7, is at 10 Bagent Close in Winchester. And our presenting officer is Catherine Watson. If you'd like to go through your presentation, please, Cat.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for the construction of an additional dwelling linked to the western end of the existing terrace at the end of Bagent Close in Winnell. Here we can see the topographical plan. Where the arrow is, this is the existing dwelling number 10. You can see the conservatory. There's an area of paving along here and an outbuilding. And then the garden is terraced. So the ground rises to the west. And you can see where the slope is demarcated. Then to the south, this back boundary is with the properties from Alresford Road. The ground rises about 1 metre from the inside of the site to the boundary. And then on top of the boundary, there's a close board fence, which is approximately 1.6 to 1.8 metres in height. Here we've got the proposed block plan. So you can see in grey the proposed dwelling is marked, and then in the bottom left hand corner there's a proposed outbuilding. To the west you can see the Winchester City Council garage block. To the north you can see where Bagent Close joins onto Firmstone Road, and to the south these are the properties on Alresford Road. And here we have the site plan. So again in grey we can see the proposed dwelling. The brown indicates an area of patio. Then there's a new outbuilding in the southwest. There's new access from the footpath, steps up. And then just to the right of that there's a passageway, closed passageway, closed by gates at either end between numbers 10 and the new property, which is duplicated on some of the existing dwellings in Bagent Close. So here we have the proposed elevation. So on the left hand side that's the existing. In the middle here's the gate that leads into the passageway that goes to the rear garden. And the materials are to be the same as existing. And then this is the rear. So on the left hand side is the proposed dwelling. The right hand side is the existing, and the boundary runs along here. And then the sides, this is the western elevation. This is what faces towards the garage block. And then the floor plan. So at the top, this is the front facing onto Bagent Close. So we've got the ground floor on the left hand side and the first floor on the right hand side, and you can see that the first floor oversails that passageway that has already been pointed out. And then the outbuilding, so as we can see it's in the bottom left hand corner, steps leading down to it, and it's just a fairly simple flat roofed building. And then we have a section through, so this is looking towards the property from Bagent Close. So we can see the boundary fence and decking area. The existing garden level is marked by this bold black line, and you see this will be built up and then the outbuilding placed on it. And then this is another section, so this is looking from the west, from the garage block. Again, you'll see the boundary with Alresford Road, and then you'll see the levels drop down towards number 11 Bagent Close. And then here we have some site photos. So on the left hand side we're stood on the patio, and we can see along here the boundary fence with Alresford Road, and along the back there's an access which leads on to the garage block. On the right hand side, we can see the existing outbuilding and the fencing which backs onto the Alford Road properties. And then on the left hand side, this is the western elevation of the existing house. You can see the existing outbuilding and the differing levels across the site. And on the right hand side, it's the boundary with the garage block. You can just see the garages over the top of the fence. And then here on the left hand side, we've got the Alford Road boundary. We can see the outbuilding and the western elevation and conservatory on the existing property. And then on the right hand side, this is looking towards the rest of the properties on Bagent Close. So we'll see number 11 just ahead here. On the left side, this is taken from Bagent Close looking towards the property. So the existing property is this one on the end. Again, you can see around here the fencing associated. And this is just looking at the entirety of the terrace at the end of Bagent Close. And then here is on the left hand side, this is taken from within the garage area. So you'll see this fence and the built up level. This fence is the boundary fence for the property, and you'll see there's a footpath which runs between the property and number 11. And on the right hand side, this is just looking the other way. So you'll see the boundary fencing there. And then just another shot from within the curtilage of the property, looking towards the footpath and number 11. And then on the right hand side, this is looking from the property down towards the rest of the dwellings on Bagent Close, and then the dwellings in the distance are Firmstone Road. So that ends my presentation, Chair. My recommendation is to permit subject to the conditions contained within the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kat. So now we turn to public speaking, and our first speaker is the objector, Anthony Hill. Mr. Hill, good morning. And I believe you have a presentation as well. Kat, are you going to put that up? Thank you. Mr. Hill, you switch on the microphone by pressing the button on the base, and the timer will start when you start speaking, and you have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Dear councillors, I believe you have seen our representation and objections dealing with the upset and distress that we've felt by residents during the construction and the loss of amenity afterwards. I will try to show, using the photographs I have here, the very real loss of amenity and how intrusive this development would be. Lack of site entrance. Photographs 1 to 3 are designed to show the lack of access to the proposed site and the potential degree of intrusion. Photograph 1 also gives our first indication of how the front and side gardens in the close would be overshadowed. Photographs 4 to 17 show the potential of overshadowing of the front and rear gardens of numbers 8, 9, 11 and 12 Bagent Close and indicate the potential for overlooking. They are a representative sample showing the position of the sun and the light entering the gardens at different times of the year in relation to the proposed development. We're going a bit fast with these slides. Can you just hold it there, please? It is likely, in each case, there will be a loss of around an hour of direct light and an additional hour of indirect light. I believe they also demonstrate considerable loss of residential amenity, contrary to the planning report. Photographs 5 to 11 are taken from the rear garden of 8 and 9 Bagent Close. It is only in the late afternoon and evening that the gardens receive the sun in such a way, and it will be lost. The effect will be evident from April to September. Next photo, please. That's all, hold there. These were taken on the 12th of August and the 3rd and 16th of September. Next photo, please. So the photograph 12 was taken from the rear garden. It shows how the morning light might be lost at numbers 11 and 12 during the winter months and the change of skyline that would occur. Photo 13 shows the even greater loss of the front gardens after midday. Next photo, please. Photos 14 to 17 to indicate both the breadth and duration of the overshadowing and change in skyline. Next slide. Photo 18 just demonstrates the current issues with parking. It says there are 9 spaces on the close for 11 properties and a possible 22 cars. The last image there, size of the construction and distance between properties and lines of sight. It shows the relative size of the construction and the actual distance between properties, which I'm taking as gardens and buildings. The development would effectively close this corner of the close from the light and air. We should note the distance between 10 and 11 is a little over 1 metre. The side garden number 11 present on this map does not seem to have been considered in the planning report. The last slide, please. These are both materials to the case of overshadowing, overlooking a loss of amenity at number 11 and 12. You can actually see here the path running alongside the house and the change in levels.
Thank you very much.
That's a lot, wasn't it?
That was very good timing. Well done. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for their neighbour, please? I think you were very clear. Thank you. And you sent that to us in advance as well, which was also very helpful. Thank you very much. So our next speaker is the ward councillor, Councillor Tippett Cooper. If you'd like to come forward, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much, Chair.
You have up to 5 minutes, Councillor Tippett Cooper. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'm primarily here this morning to support the residents of my ward in Badgett Close and their concerns about this application. Now, I note the officer's report and findings, and the report rightly says that the key material planning considerations here are the impact on the character of the streets, the wider area, and the impact on neighbouring amenity. But with respect to this report, I have real concerns about the merits of the suggestion that the application does not cause material harm to the neighbouring residential amenity. Now, Mr. Hill, who we've just heard from, opposing this application, makes the points very well in respect to the concerns about this application. Effectively, this is a new house in a small close, a relatively densely built area, and a new proposed building that will sit on top of a hill, in addition to another outbuilding that will also look to be planned to be built on even higher land than the actual property. It's the sort of application that, if it was proposed in a larger street full of detached homes, would result in outcry and real concerns. But in a more dense area like this, I think that concern should be even more acute. And the suggestion that the overshadowing impact in the report on number 9 Badgett Close will be limited, I think is quite a subjective assessment and is much more extensive than suggested. So Mr. Hill has given evidence setting out how this new building will overshadow and overlook numbers 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 Badgett Close. And that's probably issues that aren't not fully addressed in the report for this matter. And indeed, in the presentation you've had, there is quite a striking demonstration on the slide, but all the site photos, I believe, where we see how the proposed dwelling will in fact loom over 11 Badgett Close. And indeed, it does appear this property will loom over a very large part of this tight-knit community of residents, and many of whom have resided in the close for many years, many of whom who have voiced their concerns through Mr. Hill, who speaks very ably for them. My submission to you is that it will have a real and material harm on their amenity. And I haven't asked Tony for permission this, but I think when considering material harm, it's really crucial that evidence from residents is actually considered. I just want to quote something Tony said to me and an email he has sent. So this would be a very major development within a high density residential area and in close proximity to a number of existing dwellings. We do need to consider the actual human impact on local residents. They will be the ones who have to live through a very upsetting and disruptive period with the demolition and building work, and thereafter in the shadow of this development. Bear in mind that these are small properties. We do not have the luxury of another part of the garden we can go to that won't be affected, or another part of the house where we won't hear the noise. Also, some residents are elderly and will find this kind of intrusion barely half a dozen metres away from their homes, even more difficult to understand and bear. That's more of a discussion about the actual impact of the building as well. But a crucial planning consideration, as I say, will be that overlooking and overshadowing. And so I'd ask you to really carefully consider that before making your decision on this application today. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tippett Cooper. Thank you. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the councillor? Who's gone away anyway? No, it's fine. I think you're okay. I think you were very clear. I think you covered everything. Thank you very much. And finally, we have our supporter, Jeremy Tyrrell, who's the agent. Mr. Tyrrell, good morning. You know the routine. You will have up to 3 minutes. Thank you very much. When you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. We've worked with your officers to arrive at an acceptable proposal for this site. We've made amendments to the proposals and we've provided additional information. This application will provide a much needed additional dwelling in a sustainable and affordable location. The new dwelling itself will be energy efficient, adopting a fabric first approach. And by virtue of being an end of terrace, it will improve the energy efficiency of the host dwelling. Your officer's report clearly explains the considerations surrounding the amenity of neighbouring properties. The levels of overshadowing mentioned will be minimal and not unreasonable. The development is recommended for permission as it is considered that it will be in keeping with the character and appearance of the area in accordance with your policies DM15 and DM16 and would not cause material harm to neighbouring residential amenity in accordance with policy DM17 of the local plan part 2. I therefore hope you will follow your officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tyrrell. Members, do we have questions for the agent? Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Are you able to advise on the distance between the new dwelling, the proposed dwelling, and number 11 Bagent Close, please?
Thank you, Councillor. So to be clear, the distance from the front of the proposed dwelling to the side gable of number 11?
Absolutely.
Okay, I can just check that for you.
Thank you.
So measured at its sort of closest point, that is 6.5 metres.
Thank you very much.
If I could ask, on the update sheet, we're adding a new condition which is asking for a construction management plan. Obviously, this is going to be quite a tight development site. Can you just tell me what sort of how you're going to respect the residents who are already there, and how you're going to particularly approach constructing this, which is in a very tight, difficult space, please?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose there's two, I mean, it's not something we've gone into detail with our applicant yet ahead of a decision, but there's two options for construction access. One would be the existing highway, the sort of head of the cul-de-sac there. Materials would have to be offloaded and hand delivered into the site. The alternative would be a temporary agreement with which the council, if it was agreeable to bring a temporary access in from the garage court, but obviously that would be subject to agreement. But there's the sort of two alternatives there.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions about the garden building as well. It seems very large in relation to the house, and there's a lot of building up of the land to be done as well, because the levels are quite different, aren't they? Do you know what it's going to be used for? I mean, it talks about cycle storage, but I mean, it's much too big for just a cycle storage. Is it an office in the garden, or what sort of services are they planning to put in?
There's no plans to put any services other than electricity in there. In terms of its size, it's essentially, to give you an idea of scale, if you were able to go back to the site section, the additional drawing we produced, it's no higher than the rear boundary fence, that drawing. And it's essentially in footprint sort of seen as an extension of the garage blocks that exist to the west. So to give, if you haven't been to the site, that gives you sort of an idea of the scale and height and size. In terms of its use, not defined anything other and above. It will provide cycle storage, garden storage. It will replace an existing outbuilding that's proposed to be demolished, but otherwise could be used as a home office or ancillary space to the dwelling.
Thank you. So it's effectively taking the place of the existing building that's there that will be demolished. Okay, thank you. Right. Oh, and the other question I had was do you happen to know, I mean, sorry, if you don't know, I can ask the officer, but one of the key elements of this is that there's going to be no parking provision at all. And will it be clearly marketed as a house with no parking provision?
That's correct. Yes. I mean, as you're probably aware from the initial proposals, there was a proposal to put a parking space in the garden accessed via the council and garage court. That the access rights couldn't be agreed there. So we discussed it with your officer, and a dwelling with zero parking allocation was deemed acceptable. It is in a sustainable location. It's on a bus route. There is covered lockable cycle storage. But to answer your question, that any prospective owner or tenant of the new property will be made aware that it doesn't have a parking allocation. That's correct. To give sort of give you a flavour of the existing tenant in number 10 does not own a car, so that it is in a sustainable location, and there's evidence of that in the wider Winnell estate with reduced parking provisions. Your new flats at Winnell Flats, for example, have a reduced parking provision, so it's a sustainable location.
Thank you. Any further questions of clarification, members? No, thank you very much, Mr. Toll. You may return to your seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we now return to our officer. Kat, do you have anything to add following the public contributions before we come to questions?
Yeah, just a couple of things. If I can pick up on the parking considerations. Our emerging local plan policy T2, which deals with parking for new developments, actually has more scope in terms of when parking is and is not acceptable, or whether it can be developments can be constructed without parking provision. So it basically says residential development proposed with no parking provision will be supported where it's located within easy walking distance of a range of services and facilities, or there is suitable access to non-car based modes of transport. So Winnell has very good bus service. It's easy to cycle and walk into the city centre or to the Winnell estate. So just to bear that, it is a material consideration with limited weight, because of course it's not yet adopted, but it just gives an idea to members as to where the direction of travel is in terms of parking related to new development. And then also just to pick up on the overshadowing, I believe the neighbour mentioned that there'd be an hour of direct sunlight and an hour of indirect sunlight lost once a day to their property, and loss of outlook. So it's acknowledged that there will be a slight loss of outlook because there's a new building going there, but it's not in my report I've covered, it's not of such significant harm to amenity to outweigh the recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kat. So now we turn to questions on the whole report. If you could just tell me which page you're referring to. Councillor White.
So going back to what you just said about the potential for overlooking and overshadowing of number 11, obviously the new building is an elevated position on the south side of number 11. I just wonder how you calculate the potential for overshadowing. Is it the distance? Do you track the sun, or how is that? How did you come to that evaluation?
Thank you, Chair. So you see the block plan. So we've got the location plan here, and then the block plan, and this is number 11 just here. So the front elevation will be facing the side elevation of number 11. As Mr. Tyrrell said, there's a distance between the elevations of 6.5 metres. And yes, the new property is set at a higher level than number 11. But in terms of calculating how much of an impact, it's, you know, we look at the direction of the sun path throughout the day, because of the position of where the building is, there will be some loss of light to that immediate facing area during that part of the day. But it's, given the distance, it's not really and the orientation is not really so significant a loss as if, for instance, it was looking over, you know, an immediate back garden at a closer distance. So yeah, we don't tend to use a particular calculation, but it's a sort of policy compliant process that we use. Thank you.
Can you just explain exactly where is north and south on this block plan? Because I don't think that's...
Yeah, it's oriented north to south. So north is at the top, south is at the bottom.
More questions, members? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was just wondering, it's again my concerns, having visited the site last night and trying to find a parking space myself, just to have a look, was difficult enough. And I know the new local plan has much less emphasis on allocating parking for new dwellings. This dwelling wouldn't, Hampshire County Council wouldn't issue parking permits for a new dwelling, and there is no access on the site for parking. I have quite sort of concerns in regards to that. So I was just wondering sort of what weight we apply to the new local plan in regards to parking versus the current local plan.
Sorry, Chair. There needs to be weight applied to it as a material consideration, because parking provision is something that can be expected. In our current parking standards, it does. So for a long time in Winchester, we have recognised, and it's in the car parking standards, it is our most sustainable location in the whole district. And so if there's anywhere that's suitable to have no parking provision or a reduced parking provision, it's Winchester City. And then you have to then consider walking distances and alternative transport routes to consider whether you think it's harm. But yes, we would put a weight on that, and you would have, if you thought there was a problem, it would be because displaced cars be pushed onto the highway, and therefore you would consider there was a safety issue with cars. So that's where your evidence has to come from if you think that there's a harmful problem, if you think that it would be displacing cars onto the highway network to the detriment of the free flow of cars and safety, that there'd be crashes happening, things like that.
Councillor Ashwell.
Considering the proposed development is going to be higher than house number 11, will there be any overlooking into their garden?
Thank you, Chair. There are, let me just check. There are, so there's the windows to the front elevation, of course. The ground floor windows wouldn't overlook. The top floor windows are small bedroom windows. So as we can see on the right hand, excuse me, on the right hand floor plan, which is the first floor plan, we've got two windows serving bedrooms. So they look towards, but they wouldn't, because of the orientation and the fact that the dwelling opposite has a relatively blank elevation, there wouldn't be any significant overlooking towards the main amenity areas of that neighbouring property. Thank you.
So if there are no more questions, we move to debate. Perhaps I'll kick things off today. for debate. I went to see this myself yesterday after we'd been in Colden Common. And I do agree with Councillor Williams that parking is obviously an issue there, but this house clearly will be marketed as having no parking provision. Presumably it will be clear to prospective buyers that there is no opportunity to have a parking permit from the County Council, which is not issuing any new permits. And there will be secure storage in the large garden building. So I think that the parking issue, you know, if they take a car, that's at their own risk, but there's clearly nowhere to park. And when every time anybody goes to look at the site, it will be clear that parking is an issue. But it will also be absolutely clear that it is a very sustainable location in terms of public transport and in terms of access by bike and indeed walking. And I think we all need to recognise that that is ironically the direction of travel that we're going in as a council. We're going to try and encourage people to not have to use cars. It will provide a new 3-bedroom, so smallish house in a very sustainable location. I am very concerned about the construction, and that is why I've asked for this extra condition to be added that is in the update sheet, which is a management plan, which needs to take into account the concerns of local residents and to respect local residents and to make it absolutely clear when constructing this. And I will rely on officers to make sure that the plan does that they only operate, you know, within reasonable hours, and that they take every consideration for neighbours and parking. And I would have thought that access through the garage block rather than the actual residential close would be the sensible thing to do, if that can be agreed. But I mean, it is very tight. We've just turned down an application which was much too tight. I think this is very tight, but it's a good location. It's a small house and it respects the character of the area. It's going to look like an extension of that terrace. So I whilst having strong reservations about the impact on residents, I don't think the overshadowing is going to be unreasonable. There will be a slight increase in overshadowing, but not enough to turn it down. But I am concerned about the impact on residents just during construction. I think once it's there, it'll be absolutely fine. So I'm glad to see that. And I would also ask actually that we remove permitted development rights. This is a new dwelling. Again, it's a very tight space. I don't want there to be any question of unlooked at extensions in the future and so on. So if we can make sure, if we can add a removal of permitted development rights. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation with those caveats. Councillor Laming.
Thank you. I'm in two minds on this particular application. I find it's a very well designed house and it will fit in quite nicely. However, access is a major problem, and I think that even if they're not allowed parking, you've still got problems with visitors and deliveries and that sort of thing. So I'll listen to what other people have to say before I finally make up my mind. But at this moment, I'm sitting on the fence, with more inclined to refuse it.
Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Chair. May I say I realise there's an additional condition in the update sheet, and I completely agree with Chair that I am very concerned regarding access to and movement from the site. But I am also very concerned about the parking regarding this application, there is a lack of designated parking and it does not incorporate any parking provision in that area. And I'm afraid that to me is also a concern. And I know people should be walking more, but people still love their cars at the present time. And I'm very unhappy about the vehicle access. I really am. So on those two things alone, even with the extra condition, I cannot support the application.
Councillor White?
I was concerned about the overshadowing and overlooking, but I think that's been answered, and I think I'm comfortable that that isn't a huge impact. The parking, as Councillor Rutter has said, we need to be moving towards more sustainable, to encourage people to have more sustainable transport options. And that's the reality, that we need to encourage this kind of location for that reason. And I don't think it's, although it is slightly elevated in position, I don't think it's out of character with the housing that is already there, so I will be supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am slightly torn on this application. I understand the overshadowing concerns that have been raised, but I'm quite comfortable that they have been fully addressed. The way I'm torn is the parking sustainability, but then that might come from a mindset of having lived in a rural village all my life and not relying on awful bus services that are infrequent and keep getting cut. So I'm coming sort of from a position of, the car is sort of key to get anywhere, really. However, with this being in Winchester with good sustainable transport provisions, I am leaning towards supporting this application, especially with the construction management plan, which I think is really important, and also supporting the permitted development rights being removed as well of this application. But I can completely understand many people who have raised in debates the issues with regards to parking itself, and it may come from a mindset of always using the car, having lived in a rural village all my life.
Councillor Langford-Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I do think that this is a modest building in what is a large plot, and it's in keeping with the street scene. There is the issue of no parking, and I know it's going to be clearly marketed as having no parking. But like Councillor Williams, coming from a village with very little public transport, we rely on cars. I appreciate that that isn't the case here. I find myself quite conflicted because whilst I appreciate that a lot of people need cars, if we can't do a no car build in this location, where can we do it? So I find myself very conflicted.
Good point. Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. The officer has referenced the emerging plan and a certain weight should be given to it in terms of parking and no parking. However, we are working with our current local plan. We need to look at the policies of that plan in particular. We must be consistent. We must be seen to be consistent with interpretation and enforcement of our local plan and policies in particular. Here we have a development which is new development, a 3-bedroom house with no parking and should have 2 parking spaces allocated to it. Either we are seen to enforce our policies or we are not. We must be consistent with our policies. And because of that, I will not be supporting this application.
I believe even our current local plan does allow you to not have parking spaces where it is a sustainable location, but there we go.
Yeah, but
That's another discussion.
I need to respond to that.
Yes,
Yes, you're quite right there. However, the situation was that last month we refused an application in Berwick Road, purely and simply because of the no parking situation. We need to be consistent. We did.
as you know, we look at each application on its own merits, Councillor Cunningham, but thank you for your contribution. That's okay. Is there any more contribution to debate? No. So we go to the decision. So this application has been recommended for approval. Can I see those in favour of approval, please?
For, Chair.
Those against? And abstentions?
One.
Two. I think it's two abstentions. So that application is approved. Can we just clarify and confirm the vote, please? So can I see those in favour of the application?
That's yes, for, Chair.
Those against?
One.
Three.
Chair.
And abstentions? Two. So that application is approved. Thank you very much. We will now take a break for coffee and return at 11:30. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready now to start again. Can you just change the Megan? Thank you. Right, welcome back to the Planning Committee. We are now on item number 8 on your agendas. And this is an application. This is an application at Moorside Retail Park, Moorside Road in Winchester. And our presenting officer is Megan Osborne. If you'd like to give us your presentation, please, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located in Moorside Retail Park within the Winnell Industrial Estate. The retail park is located to the north side of Eastern Lane and accessed from Moorside Road. The building is split into 3 units. The far one, number 1, is currently vacant and was occupied by Halfords. The middle one is occupied by Pets at Home, that's unit 2. And this site is unit 3, which is currently unoccupied and was occupied previously by Currys. There is currently parking for 146 cars on the site, and there is a drive-through Costa to the south of the car park. The current lawful use of the site is for Class E, which is commercial, business and service use. There is a planning condition on the unit that the site requires it for the sale of bulky goods. This proposal is for the change of use of Unit 3 to be used for a gym. The planning permission, if permitted, would not remove the original condition, but would allow for a gym to be in this location, and therefore, if this building is no longer required as a gym, then it would revert back to the original retail use with the original condition on it. Just take you through some photos. So you can see on the right hand side of the screen there is Costa Coffee, and straight on this is unit 3. It says Currys on this photo. Middle one, Pets at Home, and the far one says Halfords, which is those 2 either side are currently vacant. And then further zoomed in, showing these 3 retail units. This application has undergone a thorough assessment, and further information in the form of a sequential test and marketing report was submitted, which allowed the local planning authority to assess this application fully. It is being concluded that the proposed change of use to a gym would not result in a detrimental impact on the town centre, and there are no sequentially preferable sites that are suitable and within a reasonable catchment of the site. Sufficient marketing of the site has been carried out, and it's concluded that it was the best site, that this was the best use for the site at present. It was also concluded that the site would not result in an increase in highway movements to and from the site above that of the existing retail unit. Therefore, this application is recommended for approval as it satisfies the relevant local and national policies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Megan. We now turn to public speaking, and our first speakers are Peter Evans and Phil Hall. Will you both be speaking? Good morning, Mr. Evans, and I think you've got a presentation as well.
Yes.
Lovely. Well, when you're ready, the microphone is switched on by pressing the button at the base of the unit.
Presentation has some cue points that just need the slides to change, but I just raise my hand.
Thank you. That's lovely, and you will have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
We have planning rules in place for the whole community to adhere to, and it is not down to the council to change an entire planning structure to accommodate one company. For any gym operator wishing to enter the Winchester market, the planning rules are clear that the units in Winnell have specific conditions attached to them. While I understand the landlord's desire to find a new tenant, it is worth noting that the unit was purchased with their full knowledge of the planning restrictions in place. Let's be clear, this whole application and the rejection of other suitably sized and laid out properties in the city centre have been dismissed because of the lack of free parking. Can you change the slide, please? A quick online search will show that there are units available in the city centre, but they don't want to consider them because there is no free parking. It has nothing to do with fit out costs or ceiling heights. By changing the planning laws for Pure Gym and enabling them to offer a site with free parking on the edge of town location, the city centre will be given a death sentence. You are giving all our tenants the opportunity to relocate from both the High Street and Brooks Shopping Centre, giving our city a slow, painful death at a time when it needs protecting and rejuvenating. Having fitness and leisure facilities in the city bring people into the commercial hub on a more regular basis. Should this planning application be approved, not only will the gyms be massively hit by the disadvantage of free parking for Pure Gym, so will the local businesses and lost footfall. We all have to adhere to the current parking restrictions, but it is a level playing field for everyone. There is no bias enabling one entity to be singled out for favourable treatment. Local businesses entered the Winchester marketplace with the knowledge that the parking situation would not change. As mentioned in previous objection information already supplied, the site in Winnell simply doesn't have anywhere near enough people living in walking distance to sustain a gym of the Pure Gym size, meaning that a majority are going to be driving. This means hundreds of extra cars driving through the city centre and on Eastern Lane at peak times. This puts pressure on one of the main entry points into the city for anyone on that side or travelling towards the A34 on a road which already suffers large traffic jams at peak times. The application has also referenced other retailers rejecting the unit. The attempt to rent the unit to someone else has been half-hearted at best, as there was an assumption that the planning permission would be passed. Having inquired myself to try and find out more information, I was told by the agent that planning is about to be rubber stamped with a deal already done. I suspect the other attempts to offer the units were simply quick inquiries to companies in order for this application to say they have tried other avenues. Thank you.
Thank you very much and good timing. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for Mr. Evans? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to clarify whether you were here speaking on behalf of an organisation or as an individual today.
I'm one of the owners of Energy Fitness, so we own one of the clubs we own the club in the top of the Brooks Shopping Centre.
Councillor Laming.
How many gyms are there in the centre of Winchester then?
There's currently 6 gyms, plus on top of that we also have personal training studios and Pilates studios, etc.
So are you oversubscribed?
That's a question probably for those independents to verify themselves. For us personally, we are always looking for new members. It's getting harder and harder to find new members.
Did the opening of the leisure centre affect you?
Yes. Yeah, we had also on the back of obviously COVID, that then the leisure centre opened. That had a significant impact on our business, and it's probably only now that we've started to recover. Yeah, but again, I can't speak for other companies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You may return to your seat. Thank you. And now we turn to the agent for the applicant, Jonathan Wadcock. Sorry, yes? Can I help you?
On the directors of Yarrow Estates, so
I'm afraid it's all too late, but thank you, and I'm sorry. No, I understand. No, it's fine. I understand what you're saying. I think the argument against has been very eloquently put by the objector, but thank you very much. No, all right, I understand. Thank you. Mr. Wadcock, you have up to 3 minutes and the time will start when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. Unit 3 Moorside Retail Park has been vacant since Curry's closed in June 2023 and has been marketed extensively since December 2022. with particulars delivered to over 500 retailers and their agents, and more detailed discussions undertaken with key target retailers who could operate within the terms of the existing consent. No interest has been received from these operators, with the site being dismissed on the basis of its size, existing and better retail warehouse provision in nearby towns, and concerns about the critical mass and potential trading performance of Moorside Retail Park. These issues have been emphasised by the recent departure of Halfords. Market interest in Unit 3 has been limited to Pure Gym, a fashion retailer and a food store operator. This application has been under consideration for 12 months, and we've had detailed discussions with officers who are satisfied that both sequential and impact tests have been met. The applicant and Pure Gym have considered a range of alternative sites, but none has been suitable due to multiple factors, including size, layout, ceiling heights, and adjoining noise-sensitive uses. The budget fitness sector is rapidly growing, and the Council's own retail and town centre study identifies strong future growth in commercial leisure spending in Winchester. However, almost 40% of residents' expenditure on health and fitness currently goes to facilities outside of the district. The study has also identified a notable lack of budget gym provision within Winchester, with existing gyms oversubscribed and strong but unsatisfied market demand from large gym operators. Winchester is a successful and vibrant centre whose health is underpinned by retail and food and drink uses, rather than other commercial leisure uses that make up only a small percentage of units. In these circumstances, given the rapid growth of the budget gym sector, the acknowledged under-provision of such facilities within Winchester, and leakage of expenditure from the district, it is clear that this proposal will not have significant impacts on the existing health of the city centre. In terms of trips, the proposed gym is expected to generate fewer vehicle movements than the existing retail use, and this has been confirmed by the Highway Authority. Those travelling to a gym are more likely to travel by sustainable modes than those shopping for bulky goods. Those travelling by car are also more likely to do so as part of an existing vehicle trip. The proposal will therefore have no adverse impacts on the movement strategy when compared to the existing retail use. We therefore urge you to support this application, which accords with flexible approach to sites in this part of Winnell and complies with policies WT1 and DM7. It will bring a prominent unit back into use, create job opportunities, and provide a complementary facility for those who work in the Winnell employment area.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have questions of clarification? Councillor Laming.
How many stations are you planning on? In the gym?
Will be a mix of.
Could you use the microphone? Sorry.
There'll be a mix of cardiovascular and weights machines and a studio space as well. Don't have an exact figure on the number of individual pieces of machinery there.
You also said that the gyms were getting to the stage in the city centre of being oversubscribed and people are going outside the area. Could you sort of clarify that a bit more for us, please?
Yeah, that information comes from the City Council's own study. So in 2020, the retail and town centre user study was produced by Lambert Smith Hampton. That I assume is to inform the plan process, the local plan process. So it's an independent report. So that's where those comments and that data comes from.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Could you confirm what the operating hours will be, please?
It'll be a 24-hour gym. That's kind of the standard operation for this kind of budget operator.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was just wondering, obviously in selecting the site, you would have probably done some modelling on demand from customers. I was just wondering where you're expecting, the majority of your customers to be coming from. Are they Winchester, centre of Winchester, outskirts, villages nearby?
I think it's fair to say it'd be principally the urban area, but obviously some people who come into Winchester to use services in Winchester from the outlying villages would come in to use the gym as well.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Can you give us an idea of the average size in terms of square meterage of floor space of the other companies' units? And this is because this, I believe, is over 1,080 square meters. Isn't that correct?
That's correct for the application site.
Yes.
The other gyms, I don't have precise figures for the gyms in the city centre, but I believe Anytime Fitness is around about 300 square meters. And I think Energy Fitness is about 700 square metres.
About 700, you say?
Yes.
So this is significantly bigger than
It would
any.
be a larger gym, yes.
I see. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think that's all our questions. Thank you very much indeed. If you could just switch the microphone off as you go, thank you. So that's the end of our public speaking. So Megan, is there anything you want to add before we go to questions?
No, thank you,
So
Sam.
members, questions on the report, just give me the page number, please. Councillor White.
So you mentioned about the sequential test to rule out to show what other sites had been investigated, and also the marketing. You were satisfied with the marketing that had happened regarding exploring other retail options, because they already have planning for retail. Can you just give a bit more detail about that, about what you were expecting to see, what the sequential test actually is?
Yes, our planning policy requires that a development of such as this requires a sequential test to explore the need for retail and leisure facilities. So that was carried out by the applicant, and they looked at a number of units, and those units have to be available and suitable, both available and suitable for this particular use. And they went through a number of different units that are available within the Winchester area, within the city centre, and they established that none of them were available also and suitable for this particular need. And then about the impact, did you say? Oh, the marketing. So, and this unit was marketed, and we think to a reasonable factor. There was a considerable amount of market study in retail done for this site, and it showed that a lot of retail units didn't want to go into this particular unit because of various factors, mainly size, mainly they've got other retail units within other cities and nearby that they didn't want to locate within Winchester.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you. I know that you're very thorough, your appraisal of things.
Sorry, Councillor Laming, I didn't understand any of those words. Could you speak more clearly into the microphone, please?
Sure. What I was saying was, I'm sure that we all know that Megan's very thorough on these points. Now, the appraisal for the demand for a gym, was that prior to the opening of the leisure centre, or was that taking place after?
So there was a retail leisure study carried out by Winchester City Council, which was 2020. There has been a subsequent further study done in 2024, which established that there was actually an ongoing need for leisure facilities and requirement for 2 further gyms by 2032. So it was subsequent to the leisure centre opening, that study.
Thank you. That helps clarify it.
Any more questions to Megan? Otherwise, we will turn to debate. So debate, members. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do have obviously concerns in regards to vehicle movements into this site with its size. It is incredibly large. However, there would be more vehicle movements than the previous use in regards to the previous use of the curry store in more frequent visits. I do welcome condition 4, which states that there should be cycle provision in regards to the site. And I do have concerns also about the marketing of the site, but I think that's been well answered by Megan, who has answered the questions from Councillor White. So I'm minded to support this application.
Councillor Small.
Thank you, Chair. I work in commercial property, so I have maybe a different view. I am sympathetic to what the speakers have been saying. However, I know from personal experience that these units can sit empty for quite some time, because this sort of size of unit, the requirement for it has gone down, certainly since COVID, and people's shopping habits have changed. Something like a gym in this isn't deviating too far from what its original intention was, and the condition to then revert back to that bulk retail if they close seems reasonable to me, and so I will be supporting it.
Councillor Langford Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Quite clearly, I'm not a person that uses the gym on a regular basis. However, I am aware that people will drive past gyms if they don't offer the facilities that they want to use. So it depends on the facilities that a gym is offering. So if you want to go for a spin class and the gym that you want doesn't do spin, you'll travel past 2 gyms to get to the one that does offer. So I think it depends entirely on what people are looking for. I don't think it's necessarily down to location. I don't see a problem with supporting a gym in this location. I think it's a good use of a vacant unit. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you. I do like to try and support businesses within the town centre, as it's important to keep that strong and vibrant. I think listening to what the officer has said on the analysis of future demand, I can see a reason for it, although it does concern me the size of this particular gym, but I'm minded to support it, this application.
Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Langford Smith, you do yourself an injustice. Well, where I live, the gym is very popular, whether it's on the outskirts or in a town centre. And I know you probably say, and lots do, a town centre is a preferred location. But we've heard today there are 6 gyms in the centre already. And so, to be quite honest with you, I don't see any reason why it can't be on the outskirts, and it doesn't go against policy. Policy DM7 states that as well, so I will be supporting this application.
Right, I am concerned actually about this application, because I do not want to detract from the city centre. And I do want all those gyms in the city to succeed. However, there is clearly a large demand for these sorts of facilities. And this is going to be a 24-hour gym. Can't imagine anybody going at 3 in the morning, but there you go. It's going to have, you know, space for classes as well as individual sort of machinery to run about on. I always find it amusing that people go to the gym in their cars. Why don't you just cycle to the gym and then you can just cycle home again without actually going in? You've had your exercise. But so I am very concerned, but nevertheless, this is a, you know, they're all private gyms apart from the leisure centre. And there is a free market in this facility and this service. And we've been assured that the demand is there. And I think that we have a responsibility to make sure that whilst we support the city centre, this is a different offer, really, the out of town offer. And whilst I am a bit conflicted, I, you know, respect the views and the work that the officers have put into the report, and I think that the necessary tests have been done and the necessary research has been done. So whilst we are not rubber stamping this, and we have given it strong consideration, clear consideration, I do think that the officers' report deserves our support, and I do hope that there are plenty of people who want to go to this new gym and not from existing gyms. to make them all successful. That's the hope. So if nobody else wants to contribute to debate, we will now move to the vote. So can I see all those in favour of this application being permitted, please? And those against? And
No.
abstentions? One abstention.
One abstention.
So that is approved. Thank you very much. There'll be a short pause whilst we change the officer. Thank you. Okay, members, we now move to item number 9 on our agendas. And this is land at Wangfield Lane and Vicarage Lane. Actually, it's more like Botley Road, Curdridge in Hampshire. And our presenting officer is Liz Young. So over to you, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to a proposal to introduce a barn, a stable and an area of hard surfacing onto some grazing land off Botley Road in Curdridge. This first slide shows the location plan for the site, which is identified by the red line. So the blue line just in the southeast area basically indicates the existing parking and access. So the overall size of the site amounts to approximately 0.8 hectares. It's accessed from the Botley Road, which runs along its southeast boundary. This is a B classified highway. The site lies in open countryside for planning policy purposes. This next slide shows the aerial view of the site, which is identified by the yellow star. So the site forms part of a wider area of grazing land, which has had an established equestrian use since permission was granted for this in 2021. It doesn't all fall within the same ownership. You can see in this slide the access and parking area, which has been formed recently. Permission was granted for this last year. The majority of the roadside boundary with Botley Road is enclosed by hedgerows. So this next slide shows the proposed site layout. The barn and the stable would be to each side of the access. The new hard surface would match existing, which is permeable aggregate. Also in the proposal, a manure storage area would be positioned, it's identified by number 3 in this plan alongside the stable. This next slide shows the proposed drainage strategy. So this would consist of a combination of soakaways, permeable surfacing and rainwater harvesting. The full details of the soakaway design would be agreed through the extra condition, which is in the update sheet. This next slide shows the proposed elevations for the barn. It would be approximately 4.5 metres tall. It would be steel clad. The applicant indicates it be used to accommodate a tractor and equipment to maintain the land. It would also be used to store hay in the winter. This shows the proposed floor plan for the barn. It'd be approximately 80 square metres and would be open on its front elevation. This is the elevations for the stable block. It would be about just over 3 metres tall, be clad in timber, and full details of facing materials for both buildings would be agreed through condition 3 in the report. This next slide shows the proposed floor plans for the stable. It would measure just over 30 square metres, about 33. It would consist of 2 loose boxes, an attack room, and so would accommodate 2 horses. This just shows the proposed container for the manure store, which would be alongside the stable. It would have a sealed lid and would be emptied regularly. Just to give a bit of background, this shows the approved parking and access which was granted last year. As you'll see from the photos, this is now in place. And just some more background, these are the previous planning consents on the adjacent land which had been previously granted. So this top left image relates to the 2021 permission, which relates to the change of use of the land to equestrian from agriculture, and also the erection of a barn stroke stable of about 180 square metres. The bottom right hand image shows the site adjacent to the current application site also, and this is the location plan for that consent, which related to a barn of approximately 170 square metres. Just moving on to the photos, this first image is the view as you approach the site along Botley Road from the east. As you come towards the access, the stable would be just the other side of the hedgerow, set back just approximately just over 2 metres from this boundary. This is a view, just a closer view of the access to the site. This is another view of the access, but from the west, so looking again towards the approximate location of the stable block. This is a view looking into the site through the access and the parking area. This is another view from within the site, so looking towards where the stable would be with the access beyond. And this is looking towards the location of the proposed barn. This final photo is again looking towards the location of the stable block from the existing access. You can also see in this photo the hedgerow planting, which was secured through the previous planning consent. So that brings us to the end of the slides. Just to conclude, it's recommended that permission should be granted, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Amongst other things, these conditions would limit the overall number of horses to be grazed and would also prevent any commercial use on the site. It's acknowledged there's been third-party concern in relation to visual impacts. However, it's considered that the amended plans adequately address these concerns and would also ensure it would be a smaller scale than the other developments permitted on the adjacent land. And that concludes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. We now turn to public speaking. I've agreed that Councillor Siddhartha Ashford, as the local councillor, can also speak this morning. But first we have from the Parish Council, Councillor Jonathan Carkeet. Councillor Carkeet, welcome. You will have up to 3 minutes and the timer will start when you start speaking, and the microphone is switched on by pressing the button on the base of the unit. Thank you.
Good morning. The Parish Council is concerned that in the past 4 years, this site has been the subject of 3 applications to subdivide the same field. To intensify the use of this application is in direct conflict with Winchester's previous decisions on the site, procedurally irregular and creates planning inconsistency, and we refer members to the attached plan on the screen. The area edged green shows the 21 planning approval for the stabling of 4 horses across 4 hectares. Included within the planning report, it stated it is accepted that Vicarage and Wangfield lanes are narrow and without footpaths. It is also accepted there is no immediate bridleways to hand. This does not become a concern as the 4 horses to be stabled in the building are private competition horses which are exercised and maintained differently from pleasure horses used for hacking. There is sufficient land for the exercise required for these 4 horses. A safeguarding condition is imposed preventing horses from hacking out on the highway network. There is a further planning condition within the 21 permission. Condition 7 says the stables hereby permitted shall be only used for the keeping of 4 horses on the site to ensure satisfactory development, the green being the entire. There was then a planning application permitted by this committee in 2023 for the stabling of a further 1 horse plus a barn, but no amendment to the restriction of 4 horses across the entire site. The area edged red on the plan shows the current application seeking permission for further 2 horses plus a barn. There has been no application to amend planning condition 7 of the 21 application, and therefore only 4 horses can use the entire site in red, which includes the application site, but you are now seeking permission for 3 separate barns to stable the 4 permitted horses. Therefore, the 21 permission for the 4 horses needed the entire site in green. It set the principle that further development was not appropriate, and without amendment to the 21 permission, today's application is entirely in conflict with prevailing planning conditions. Should members overlook the procedural irregularities, we refer you to the relevant planning policies. Para 2.3 of the Equine SPG states development is permitted for equestrian activities in countryside locations, provided it complies with the requirements of proposal RT8 of the local plan, which relates specifically to equestrian development. RT8 states that development of the stables in the countryside will be permitted, provided that at Para 1, where possible, make use of existing buildings, and at Para 3 are related to the existing or proposed bridleways. So turning to Para 1, the obligation for the applicant to demonstrate why they cannot make use of the existing buildings. If we see the next photograph, please. The photographs on screen show that the site has direct and unfettered access to the site under the 23 permission. The SPG states that the applicant should use the existing buildings, and given that available access, there is no need for that further barn to be constructed. Hence, it is not in compliance with policy. Para 3. Given that the 21 planning report states there are no existing bridleways, this should be grounds enough for rejection. The 21 permission was only acceptable because of how much land was available to exercise the 4 horses. This application proposes less than 1/4 of the site, but only half as many horses, and is therefore not sufficient land for safe exercising horses. It is evident this application directly conflicts with the 21 permission in condition 7. It creates equine welfare issues in contravention of RT8 of the SPG and is therefore not policy compliant. We urge councillors to consider the cumulative effect of their decisions, provide consistency in determining this application with due regard to the 21 permission conditions. You must reject the application because the same land cannot be used twice, or defer it.
Or indeed 3 times. Thank you very much indeed. Members, do we have questions of clarification for the parish council representative? No, I think you were very eloquent and fast. Thank you very much.
There's a lot to cover.
Thank you. Councillor Ashwell, do you want to come forward? Councillor Ashley, you have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at today's planning committee. The application site previously formed part of a larger 4-hectare site. Planning permission was granted earlier this year, or maybe late last year, Planning permission was granted earlier this year for a barn to provide storage for hay, farm machinery, and one horse to be grazed. The latest application seeks to add stables and other buildings for further 3 horses. British Horse Society recommends a ratio of 1 horse per 0.4 to 0.6 hectare. The site is about 0.9 hectare, and hence a maximum 2 horses could be accommodated in that site. It means the site will now provide a stabling for 8 horses on a site previously applied for just 4 horses in 2020. It appears to me that the 4-hectare land, which was a farmland, is slowly turned into an alternate use. This increase in stabling is not in accordance with the WCC's Equestrian Development and Policy DM12. These buildings are out of proportion
and will lead to detrimental impact on the existing landscape. This is not in compliance with the national planning policy framework. The planning application should be refused as it is against the policy CP 201 and MTR 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashwell. Any questions of clarification for the local councillor? No. Thank you very much. You may return to your seat. If you could switch the mic off. Thanks. Thank you. And now we turn to the supporter, Claire Carvalho. Welcome, Ms. Carvalho. You have up to 3 minutes and the microphone is switched on by pressing the button on the base. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am the agent for the application and I'm speaking on behalf of my client, the landowner. Firstly, we welcome the officer recommendation for approval and have worked in conjunction with the planning officer and the consultees during the course of the application. My client purchased the land back in June 2023 with the intention of providing a small paddock for the family's own 2 small ponies, which are looked after and cared for primarily by the children and grandchildren of the applicant. Generally, it brings the family together, gives the younger ones a hobby, which in turn keeps them off their computer screens and out in the fresh air. The ponies are currently kept in another paddock at a different location and graze the land there, but their aspirations are to have a purpose-built stabling facility, which is beneficial, especially as we're coming into the winter months, for the general comfort and welfare of the ponies. The land formed part of a larger land holding, which was owned by a previous landowner and became surplus to their requirements, so was sold to my client as they live and work locally, so the location and existing use as a paddock met their requirements. We successfully worked with the officers here at Winchester Council last year and obtained planning permission for a new access, which has been installed and is now well established. The proposal is for a stabling building providing accommodation for only 2 horses and a tack room for the associated equestrian equipment, and an open fronted barn which is to be used to store machinery such as a tractor and grass cutting equipment, but the barn will also be utilised for the storage of hay, which will primarily be in the winter months to supplement the ponies' food. We've worked closely with the officers on the recommended amendments following the consultation period and taken on board some of the feedback we've received from the local community. The amendments included reducing the overall footprint of both the barn and stables, but also a reduction in height to reduce the visibility beyond the existing mature hedgerow along Botley Road. The proposed use is entirely appropriate in this location and will support the continued equestrian use that is already approved here. British Horse Society recommends 1 horse per 0.4 to 0.6 hectares on permanent grazing. The application site is therefore suitable for the 2 ponies. However, through rotational grazing, they will both graze here at the application site and also at their current paddock to avoid overgrazing on both land. As mentioned, their feed will also be supplemented with hay. To avoid any concerns over the use of the site, we have confirmed our acceptance of a planning condition to be imposed to restrict any commercial equestrian usage. We hope you are able to approve this application. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the applicant's agent? Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just clarify for me? You've said that it's grazing for 2 ponies and the barn is for hay storage. Why do they need a tractor? It's for general maintenance of the site. They maintain their other paddock as well. So it's used for storage of the tractor, hedge cutting equipment, grass cutting equipment. Thank you.
Can I ask that there are no bridleways easily accessed, and Botley Road is a very fast road. I drove to the site to have a look at it yesterday and had great difficulty even pausing on the side of the road, let alone getting out of the car. How do they access the site, and apart from riding round the field, well, the quarter of the field, where do they go with the horses? I mean, is it like children that have to be put in the car and taken to every activity? Do they have to be put in a horse box and driven to somewhere where they can actually walk around?
I think the ponies are primarily is around the field, around the paddock. I think they might take them out elsewhere, but they've got their horse box. They'll be horse boxed and taken out, and then and then kind of where the ponies will sort of reside. But
Okay, thank you. Any more? Councillor Clear?
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing, and please excuse me if I've missed it, but I'm hearing it's 2 horses will be accommodated, but I'm also hearing 3, 4. Is it definitely 2 horses, please?
It's definitely 2 horses. So the stable is for 2 horses, for 2 stables and a tack room. So
And that's a
it's only
condition
2.
as well, it's a
Only
condition.
2 horses.
Councillor Small?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back. The actual size of the whole field as it is at the moment, your part, the part you're representing, is that 0.8 hectares?
Yes, that's correct.
So
approximately 2 acres.
So when you take out what will be the reasonably hard standing and where the barn is, what does that leave for grazing?
I haven't got that to hand.
But you say the British Horse Association said that it's recommended 0.4 to 0.6 hectares per horse. So just looking at the block plan, it's obviously going to be less than the 0.8, which is less than is recommended.
That's if they are permanently grazed. The recommendation is if they're permanently grazed on that site with no supplemental feed, but there will be supplemental feed and rotational grazing at another location. That clarifies.
Councillor Ashwell?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. I'm a bit confused because sometimes you're saying ponies or horses. Is it one or the other? And also, how long will they be expected to stay on the site? Is it permanent or are they going to get shifted?
So my client refers to them as ponies. I believe the technical difference between horse and pony is the size. I believe a horse is a larger breed, larger hands. A pony is smaller, so they are classed as ponies. Obviously, the British Horse Society goes by references them as horses. They could be here longer than their other paddock. The other paddock is not it hasn't got what they want to do is have the facilities here with the stabling, and this be a more permanent sort of residence for the horses. They still do own the other location, which will need to be sort of maintained for the grass and things, keeping the grass down, so the horses will be taken there to take the grass down, but will return here. But this will be the more permanent location for them.
Councillor Cunningham?
Thank you, Chair. Could you tell me what services are proposed to be connected to the actual stable block and the barn, please?
There's no water, there's no services as such. The water gets taken to the in sort of barrels for sort of feeding water. There's going to be rainwater harvesting, which is going to be for washing machinery and things like that. But in terms of actual servicing, there isn't any. It's just a field as such, if you like, at the moment.
What about electricity?
There isn't electricity at the moment, no.
Thank you.
Councillor Laming?
Thank you. I'm a little bit confused, so I hope you can help me on this. If we look at the whole site, you've already put permission to and built the barn at the top of the field.
Councillor Laming, the application before us is just for that, where
Yes,
the
I
red
know.
line is.
Let me come to the point, please.
Well, that's the only bit that they are
Yeah, I know. I'm coming to the
talking
point.
about.
So
Can you
therefore,
ask about history with the officer, please? Because the applicant.
I'm
doesn't have
asking
that.
for a clarification, if you
All
don't mind. You've now applied for these stables at the bottom of the field. Now, I seem to remember that you had tractors stored at the top of the field in the previous application, and now you want tractors stored at the bottom of the field. So I'm wondering why you need 2.
Can we address this question to the officer, Councillor Laming? Because it's not there. That's not the bit that's in the red line. Okay, so that it's not this application.
Yes, but we're looking at the whole site.
Yes, but
as
that's a
well.
question for the officer, not the applicant's agent. Sorry about that. Thank you very much indeed. Any more questions that are relevant and pertinent? And no, you may return to your seat. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right. Liz, do you have any comments to make before we come to office two members' questions, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify a couple of points about the grazing intensity. Just going back to the original planning consent for the wider site. Firstly, with the condition that relates to the 4 horses, which restricts the overall number of horses to 4. There's just a couple of points to make. One is that the overall site that the condition relates to, because of the presence of 2 red lines, is slightly unclear. But secondly, in terms of the overall number of horses across the entire site that could potentially be grazed, this would amount to 7 in total, which would amount to 0.5 hectares per horse, which is within the British Horse Society's guidelines, which state between 0.4 and 0.6. So it is slightly above that minimum level. The applicant stated that it would be 2 small horses in this case on this particular site. So with the other concerns in relation to taking horses off the site, I'll just highlight that the entire site already has an established use to graze and keep horses on the land for recreational use. Although that restriction is in place, that does establish the principle of keeping horses on the land. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we move to questions. And Councillor Laming, I believe you have a question for the officer.
Yes, I'd like to ask that question that I was trying to get answer to before. You've already got a barn at the top of the site, which we gave permission for, and that included an area for a tractor. Now you're asking for permission for stables and a storage facility at the bottom of the site, again for a second tractor. So I'm wondering what the requirement is and whether it's justified.
Yeah, so my understanding is the site is now in different ownership. So the applicants, who obviously are intending to graze the land and carry out the equestrian use, need a tractor, need to house a tractor, but also to store hay. That's the other requirement for the barn, is to store hay during the winter to supplement the 2 ponies that are grazed on the site. So it's not solely required for the storage of the tractor. Also, I'll just point out it's quite a significantly smaller barn than the other approved barns on the adjacent sites.
So, any other questions, members, on the report? Councillor Ashwell.
It's not clear from the report whether there's going to be any outside lighting or lamps, or because it's the countryside where it's always dark in the area.
Yeah, there's no lighting proposed as part of this development. As the applicant mentioned, there's no electricity to the site.
Can I ask, so this field has been given planning permission for equestrian use and a barn and stables put up. Then it was subdivided, and then another barn and more stables were put up. And now we're having another subdivision and a new owner and yet more stables and another barn. So that this one field is going to have 3 large barns and at least 2 stable blocks. Isn't this overdevelopment of the site? Isn't this a cumulative impact that has the cumulative impact been properly considered in this case? And looking also in the wider area, I mean, literally over the road, the same thing seems to have happened, and there are several new barns and new stable blocks and fields that have obviously been subdivided, and it goes on. Where is the limit?
Yeah, the report does consider the issue of cumulative impacts. As I say, I have done a calculation in terms of grazing density. So I suppose there's just a few points. One is that this is significantly smaller than the previous developments undertaken. The overall grazing recommendations would really then limit any further development taking place across the site, given that we're now at 0.5 hectares per horse. And I suppose what I would say is generally when you grant permission for recreational equestrian uses, you're accepting that the landscape is going to change with the addition of structures to facilitate that use. Policy DM12 also does recognise that horse-related development is now an accepted part of the rural landscape. So taking those points along with the reduced size, I don't think we've got grounds to refuse on cumulative impacts from as far as I can see.
Thank you. Councillor Langford Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Policy DM12 seeks to ensure proposals reduce their visual impact by minimising the need for additional built development, hard standing and fencing. The policy also discourages the subdivision of paddocks and states that landscaping schemes will be required as part of the proposals along with screening to ensure satisfactory visual appearance. Are we convinced that, as you say about the cumulative effect, are we convinced that this there is sufficient screening to ensure a satisfactory visual appearance in this one field that has been continually subdivided?
As I say, the amended plan submitted have reduced the overall size of the development. Its location is in the lowest part of the site rather than in an elevated position, which also reduces the impact. It will be visible, it wouldn't be completely obscured, but that wouldn't in itself make it unacceptable given that the attempts have been made to reduce the overall scale of the development.
Councillor Langford Smith, could you switch off your? Thank you. Any more questions, members? Otherwise, we will move to debate. So, debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think there is a theme sort of emerging here. I know the area very well, living in Bishop's Waltham. It is my route to go for food shops. And I have seen the increase of equestrian development alongside the Botley Road over the years. I do think that this this development, and I can never say the word that begins with C, thank you. I can never say it, never have. I'll keep trying. I do think that that impact from the other equestrian developments is too much. I think this is just a step too far. So under DM12 paragraph 4, I do think that does go too far in this case. So I won't be able to support the application, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Councillor Small.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Williams has just said. I also think that this is far too much development given the size of the field and what we've already previously agreed to, and also discovered that this would leave less than is recommended for the 2 horses to be grazed on. So I cannot support this application.
Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with my fellow councillors. DM12, that's the policy, equestrian development. I think it has too many barns, stable blocks. I consider it as an overdevelopment and harm the character of the area. And I think it has an adverse impact on the whole thing. So sorry, DM12 to me sticks out. And I cannot, I'll be against this. Thank you.
Councillor Ashford.
Just to echo what my colleagues are saying, further in our ward up at Shedfield, we have already had suffered with the Shedfield Equestrian Centre and how that's accumulated over the years. I am concerned about the welfare of extra horses on this area, and I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that there has been attempts to reduce the overall scale of the development. However, I'm bearing in mind the cumulative impact in this area. I'm also concerned about sustainability. There is no water on site, so horses need water every day, and I don't believe they can drink rainwater, recycled water. They need fresh water, so that will have to be brought in, and also limited access to bridleways, so the horses are going to have to be taken out. I don't believe this is a good site for that, so I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Laming.
Yeah, I also believe that there's overdevelopment of this particular area. The barn is quite large, and horses do need fresh water. There's no two ways about it, and they need quite a lot of it. And also, when you're mucking out early in the morning and in the evening, you need lots. So therefore, if we do decide to grant permission, we should put in some form of condition on that about lighting that could come up in the future. But at this moment in time, I'm more inclined to not support this at all.
Any more? Councillor White.
I can see measures have been taken to reduce the scale of the buildings. For example, there is rainwater harvesting, which is a sustainable way of having some water on the site. But from the photographs, the hedging screening doesn't look adequate to screen the huge barn, and again the cumulative impact is worrying me.
Right, if there's no more debate, we move to the decision. So can I see all those in favour of the officer recommendation to permit this application? And those
None.
against? And abstentions? So that application is so we have gone against the officer recommendation. Can we come up with our planning reasons, please, for refusing this application? I will speak first to our officer.
Thanks, Chair. I think you've made it very straightforward, because you've made it very clear what you want to refuse this for in respect of policy DM12. There's quite a few criteria, and so we can summarise it quite simply. I was thinking along the lines of the siting of an additional equestrian enterprise that uses some of the language in the policy, and the appearance intensification as a result of that in respect of cumulative impact in the context of the area. That the proposal would therefore fail to respect and minimise visual impact in the location. Criterion 3 is that it shouldn't involve the erection of new buildings, such as hard standing, that could be isolated or scattered. So I think we could include that criterion as well, because it's kind of in the middle of the field, isn't it, rather than being in a corner or around the boundaries. And then criterion 4 is very much does not harm the character of the area by reason of cumulative impact when considered with other similar enterprises in the area. Obviously, you feel there's harm in that respect. And I think that probably summarises that. So it would be contrary to that policy and that policy alone. I think I would recommend. Anything else to add to that?
So on that basis, on that reason for refusal, can I see all those in favour of refusing this application, please? That's all
unanimous.
Yes, thank you. So that application is refused. Thank you. I think we've just got time for the other Curdridge one before lunch. Okay, so we now move to our next item on the agenda, number 10, which is at land opposite Lockham's Hill, Lockham's Road, Curdridge in Hampshire. And our presenting officer for this item is Rose Chapman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I get too far into the presentation, I'd just like to draw your attention to the update sheet where a number of clarifications and updates were made. And I just wanted to raise that this application is unusual in that the applicant has decided to perform a referendum in the local parish of Curdridge, the details of which are laid out in the report. So here we have the red line plan. The site is located at the corner of Gordon Road and Lockham's Road. And here we have an aerial view of the site. Lockham's Road runs along the point of the cursor here, largely screened by trees, and Gordon Road runs at the point of the cursor here. At the corner of the site, you can see this large tree. This is a TPO tree. Here we have the proposed site plan. It's 3 dwellings. You can see the root protection area of that TPO tree indicated here in purple at the point of the cursor. In terms of surface water drainage, there are a number of attenuation ponds you can just see highlighted at the cursor. These are the points in blue. So there's 1 on plot 1 here, 2 within plot 2, and 2 within plot 3. It's important to note that these areas would be located outside of the amenity areas for this for the dwellings. So it's proposed that a post and rail fence would run roughly along the edge as indicated by the point of the cursor. So all the SUDS features and the ecology features would be fenced off from the dwellings proposed. As I indicated in the update sheet, this is an additional slide that's not in your packs. This is a proposed street scene. As you can see, the site is indicated by the red line at the top. And at the edge of the site, Gordon Road starts to make a significant fall down the hill. As a result, when looking up the hill, there is they would be viewed as more imposing than they would actually be. But this is due to the level changes in the area. And then we have the proposed elevations. I'll run through these fairly quickly. The proposed ridge height is approximately 9 meters. This is for plot 1. And as you can see from the floor plans, these are 4-bedroom dwellings. Plot 2 would have the same ridge height, approximately 9 meters. So the materials for all 3 are a mix of wood, brick and flint. Again, a 4-bedroom dwelling. And plot 3, again, 4-bedroom dwelling. So just moving on to some photos of the site. As you can see, the area is relatively flat. And you can see the neighbouring property at the top left-hand section there. So this is looking towards Lockham's Road, the TPO tree you can see at the end here. And at the bottom, a closer view of the neighbour's house. You can just see at this in this lower photo some of the on-site as existing surface water issues. And these are shown again. There's some pooling here.
This is the view of Lockham's Road towards the junction with Gordon Road. So this is looking east, and the view below looking west. The recommendation is to refuse. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rose. Now we turn to public speaking, and our first speakers are the objectors Sue Bishop and Damon Weir. Welcome, and you will have 3 minutes between you. Have you decided how you're going to share the time? Fine. Okay, and Mr. Weir is to help with any questions of clarification. Lovely, thank you. And if you could switch on the microphone, which is by pressing the button on the base. Perfect. And you will have 3 minutes from when you start. Thank you.
My name's Sue Bishop. I live in Gordon Road, Curdridge, the site of the proposed development. And representing today a large number of residents, I'd like to take you through the feelings of the residents and the points which we made and which have been summarised in the case officer's very thorough evaluation report and conclusion. We're very grateful to the case officer for carefully considering all the comments put forward by the residents and coming to the conclusion to refuse the proposal. It's really important to the community, particularly to the residents of Gordon Road, to protect this green space, which some supporters have said is an eyesore, but for us it's a place where we see lots of wildlife and keeps the rural setting we love, and the reason why many of us and others in Curdridge chose to live here. The desire to retain the green spaces in Curdridge is also emphasised in the new neighbourhood plan, which is currently work in progress. Our key points were: we agree with the officer's report that this proposal does not meet the criteria of policy MTRA 3, as the proposal has not been driven by an identified community need, and there is no demonstration of clear community support. The proposed development is not infill. The proposed development does not meet the criteria of policy MTRA 4, as this is for market housing, not a development with an operational need for a countryside location. Although there was a referendum held by the applicant to ascertain support in our community, we had severe reservations about how it was conducted, as neither the vote counting nor the process were carried out by an independent party. Prior to this application being submitted, the applicant offered £50,000 towards community projects if approval for the proposal was given. This money has been cited by some as their sole reason to support the proposal, but it's not a planning related reason for support. The final tally of documents uploaded to the planning portal as detailed in the case officer's report, again, does not indicate any clear community support for the proposal. And finally, the proposal fails to show how biodiversity would be protected and enhanced, and fails to guarantee appropriate mitigation and has the potential to harm protected species and their habitats, something which causes us great concern for our local countryside. So in summary, we believe that the proposal does not meet the criteria in policies MTRA 3 or 4, nor protects the biodiversity of the locale. We appreciate your time in listening to our objection points on what is a very important matter for us. And on behalf of those of us who have objected, and particularly for those of us in Gordon Road who live alongside the site, we hope that you will uphold the case officer's recommendation to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for the residents? Local residents? No, you were very clear and eloquent. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we move to the supporter, Alice Drew, the agent, and Miles Wilshire. Hello, welcome. And you also have 3 minutes. I assume you've decided who's going to speak. Yes. Right. Okay. Don't forget to switch off your microphone when you stop speaking and switch yours off. That'd be lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here on behalf of the applicant to invite you to approve the application, which has been supported by both the local community and the parish council. Ahead of submission of this application, we undertook pre-application discussions throughout which the case officer was communicative, and an approach to gauge community support was agreed. Whilst we sought to engage with the council during the consideration of this application, unfortunately there has been limited communication, which we believe has led to inconsistencies and a limited assessment of the community support in the officer's report. Throughout the application, proactive engagement with the local community was undertaken, with consultations being held to discuss the proposals. 64 comments of support and 43 objections to the proposals were received. This alone demonstrates that there is clear community support for the scheme. It is of concern that the officer's report did not consider all of the comments of support to carry the same amount of weight. Is this fair? The applicant will provide a significant financial contribution over and above SIL towards a church roof and play area. This contribution is proposed to meet local aspirations as required by policy MTRA3 and can be secured through a Section 106 agreement. The proposals can be nutrient neutral through securing credits for an appropriate scheme, and a Section 106 agreement can secure biodiversity net gain. Therefore, these matters should not be reasons for refusal. I urge you to consider the clear community support which has been demonstrated and invite you to overturn the officer's recommendation and instead support the proposals and approve the application.
I live in Curdridge and I'm here to defer this application to allow officers more time to conduct a thorough objective assessment of community support. As you can see from the image on the screen, which highlights representations received on the planning file, there is clear support for the proposals across Curdridge, with the majority of objections concentrated near the site. I urge councillors not to overlook the strength of this support. I'd like to bring to your attention a few significant inaccuracies within the officer's report that appear to contradict previous guidance. Firstly, it is concerning to see a division in how letters of support were handled. All supportive comments should be treated equally, yet in this case, they were considered separately. This has led to questions regarding the fairness of officers' assessment. Secondly, the report makes mention of a lack of clear community support, despite having achieved the 62-53 majority vote in the referendum, which meets the standard of a 50% majority as confirmed by the officer. This shift in expectations raises questions of consistency and fairness. Thirdly, the referendum's validity has been questioned because it was not conducted by the parish council. However, as noted in correspondence with officers, our approach was previously agreed by the development manager. Why now is the officer backtracking on the advised process? It is not fair and it needs a thorough review. The report states that while 94 households engage with this application, this does not constitute a clear majority. I question why 18% engagement is not considered significant when typical engagement rates rarely reach that. This warrants a robust assessment of what clear community support really means. The £50,000 provided by the applicant would deliver a much needed park in the village and also support a new church roof. Deferring the application would allow time for further dialogue and ensure that the true breadth of community support is accurately represented and assessed to confirm the proposals are in accordance with the policy.
I'm afraid that's the end of your time, but thank you very much indeed for your contribution. Members, do you have any questions of clarification? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned as agent that the parish council supported this application.
Yes, they did.
Okay. In our documentation, it appears they haven't supported the application.
We were at the parish council meeting and they did confirm support for the application. I believe that is on the planning file.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably maybe one for the officer to clarify.
I'll follow that up later. And then the other one was in regards to the referendum they had, with the voting open from 1 PM till 8 PM. Was that just on one particular day?
Yes, it was on one particular day. So what we did before we carried out the referendum, we engaged with the officers to agree that process to gauge the community support. And we set out timings, how we'd take the votes, how it would be advertised and everything that was agreed with the council prior to undertaking that.
And was there consideration to running the referendum process through the parish council?
So we were never, that was something that never came up in discussion with the council. So we felt as though as the applicant that he could lead it, they could lead it themselves. There was never any conversation had that it would need to be led by the parish council.
Any other? Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the referendum, could you tell me how many people on Gordon Road were actually for or against the application?
So unfortunately, I can't tell you that because of GDPR. The ballot papers were simply a question across, similar to what you do for a local or a general election, where we couldn't write down the number of people, their name, address, and what they voted. So that just wouldn't have been fair. So unfortunately, I can't provide you with that information.
Another question, Councillor Ashwell?
Yeah, just on that again. So you didn't even ask for a postcode or anything?
So we did. So we agreed with the council before we undertook the referendum that it would just be within the Curdridge parish that people were eligible to vote, and they had to bring photographic ID with them, or a bill or a bank statement, something like that, to confirm their address. So that's how we did it. And we took down on the day, we had a list from the open register, which we purchased from the council, of all of the people that didn't opt out of the register. And then anyone else that wasn't on that list, we noted down that they had already voted. And then if we received an email or online votes, we couldn't then count their vote twice, if that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of clarification? No? Thank you very much indeed, both of you. Thank you. Right, so Rose, do you want to update us on anything before we come to questions?
Thank you, Chair. Just as a note of clarification, the Parish Council's comments are on page 145.
Thank you. So members, questions on the report, just let me know the page number as you ask the question. Thank you. Like Councillor Langton-Smith.
Sorry, I don't have the page reference. I wrote it down as the people were speaking. The public presentation said that they were able to secure the contribution of 50,000 through section 106, but page 151 of the page says that 3 dwellings do not need to provide a financial contribution for community benefits. Can I have clarification on that, please? Will it be secured through the S106 agreement, or is it unable to be secured?
Thank you, Chair. So in order for payments to be, or contributions to be made, they need to be policy compliant. In this case, the size of the development would not be significant enough to justify under policy for a section 106 to secure those funds. For a bit of context, usually it's major applications that would require those contributions to be made and secured, though there are some cases where that could be secured otherwise, but in generally speaking, for us, an application of this size, the contributions are usually made through a SIL payment that go to the local parish council, and then they can use that money for upkeep of equipment, expansion of equipment, and of those facilities. I hope that clarifies.
Thank you. Councillor Ashwell.
Could you confirm is a community need for these size of houses in the village?
Thank you, Chair. Generally speaking, we are in a housing crisis, and this application would provide 3 family houses. When looking at it on a local level, the local authority does have in excess of a 5-year housing land supply for market housing. Therefore, in terms of a local need for these 3 houses, I do not consider that that has been demonstrated.
Councillor White.
So, what would be an acceptable community referendum? You said it wasn't the way it was done isn't an acceptable consideration. So, what would you expect to see in a community referendum that would have been acceptable? And if the community had expressed a need for it, would that outweigh the policy MTRA4, where this is an infill, it's not affordable housing, and it's not a majority of 2 to 3 bedroom houses? So what's the weighting of the community referendum?
Thank you. So in terms of referendum, all along we have said that it needs to be in line with the neighbourhood plan referendum. It's the closest thing that we could find within the policy, and the policy does state that it needs to be in line with a local plan or other means of demonstrating strong community need. Not necessarily those exact words, but that's the general gist. When looking at the various bits of legislation, how to perform those referendum is laid out in a number of different legislations, namely the Neighbourhood Plan regs for 2012, the Localism Act of 2011, and the Representation of Peoples Act 1985, and they clearly lay out how to go about it. When it came to the assessment, I did not think that there was sufficient information submitted to indicate that the steps required within that legislation had been sufficient.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to clarify, I've completely misread in regards to Kirdridge's support for the application, so I'd just like to apologise before you get to the debate stage about that. So completely my mistake, I misread that. I did have a question though in regards to when the application was verified in regards to biodiversity net gain.
So biodiversity net gain has been a discussion all the way through. When it was last looked at by the ecology officer, she had some concerns that what was proposed would not be sufficient, and therefore that resulted in the current recommendation for refusal reason.
If there are no more questions, members, we move to debate. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. This one's very straightforward for me. We're not able to secure the contribution through an S106 agreement. I am very wary of referendums that have not been conducted through the correct process, and I think we could be opening a whole can of worms if we accept developers doing their own referendums. Clearly, no agricultural need has been demonstrated for this development in the countryside, so I support the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Sorry. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. No, very similar comments. I would welcome, a further application coming forwards with a concrete commitment in regards to contributions through a Section 106 agreement. I do think that this needs to be as part of Kirdridge Parish Council's neighbourhood plan going forward. So I would welcome an application at further stage in conjunction with Kirdridge Parish Council.
So, Councillor Leamy. And yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I find this quite straightforward. I think the officer did a good report, and this goes against our policies. Therefore, I have no hesitation in supporting the recommendation.
Councillor Cunningham.
I second Councillor Lamming's comments. MTRA 3, MTRA 4, CP 15, CP 16, and CP 4, CP 2. Are the policies that it runs contrary to. I will be supporting the officer in the recommendation.
Thank you. So we go to the vote. Can I see all those in favour of the officer's recommendation that this application be refused? Can I see? That's 8 Chair, unanimous. Thank you. So that application is refused. Now we take time for lunch and return at 2 p.m. Thank you.